Congratulations, you've almost made it. A crowd of candidates cut down to two of the most divisive players on the political scene. How will it all end? And with just 2 days until the election, who will be the most motivated to get out and vote? Today is Sunday, November 6, 2016, and this is Flashpoint. All right, welcome to Flashpoint. Good to be with you live on this Sunday before an election day that will bring to an end a campaign season unlike any in memory. And in a bit of a surprise, Michigan has seen a sudden last week surge of visits by the candidates and their lieutenants. Why? Well, because you have to believe that both campaigns have been coming to the conclusion that Michigan is increasingly in play. A state that many believed was solid Hillary Clinton territory seems less solid this morning. Why is that? Well, two things to keep in mind. First, Hillary Clinton did not win the Democratic primary here, so it was a matter of trying to recruit the Bernie Sanders supporters over to the Clinton camp. Second, and more recent, the absentee ballot polling seems to suggest that African Americans have thus far not been voting in the numbers that some might expect. Now, except in blowouts, most elections do boil down to turnout. But it's a more open question than ever this year. Just how committed are each candidate's supporters? Are they going to be there on Tuesday? And then, what do we have on Wednesday? The nation's first ever woman president, or a first ever of a different kind, a businessman trading his status as a reality television star for the highest office in the world. It's the biggest question here and all across the 50 United, and we'll try to unravel it all this morning, live on Local 4 on Flashpoint. All right, let's start things off this morning with a conversation with our pollster here at Local 4 and for the Detroit News, Richard Zuba, the pollster for the Glengarriff Group. He's joining us this morning via Skype from Lansing. Richard, I've had people keep asking me, what do I think is going to happen on Tuesday? And I really don't have any confidence in answering after 30 years of covering politics. So let me go to a learned man such as yourself. Do you feel like you have confidence over what's going to happen on Tuesday?
Well, we're seeing a race in Michigan now with Clinton leading by approximately 4 points. It's a far cry from the race we were seeing 2.5 weeks ago where she was up by double digits. But Michigan is looking a lot like it's supposed to right now. And what I mean by that is, you know, we've been lulled into Barack Obama's huge wins in 2008, 2012. Michigan is looking a lot more like it did back in 2000 and 2004. Which is a Democratic advantage, provided Democrats turn out their voters. But it is clearly Clinton's race to lose in Michigan.
As we look at the broader map then, I still have a hard time seeing how Donald Trump wins without winning Florida. But if he is able to do that, Michigan, it seems to me, becomes the next real linchpin in the way forward for him. Is that how you see it? Well,
you know, I think his move into Michigan was more a sign of desperation than strength, to be honest. And I think he's looking for a path, some way to break through in the North. He needs to do well in Pennsylvania and Michigan. And Michigan and Pennsylvania look very similar right now. If he loses Florida, I don't know that he has a pathway at all.
The polling that we've seen is showing us that African-American voters so far in early and absentee voting are not voting in the numbers that we've seen, that we saw 4 years ago. Maybe perhaps understandable given that that was a Barack Obama election. But how troubling or worrisome is that trend for Hillary Clinton?
Well, you know, I don't think there's any Democratic candidate who's going to poll as well as Barack Obama did amongst African-American voters. I think we need to be realistic about that. And I think we need to look at 2000 and 2004 levels for more realistic expectations. Having said that, I think you can throw the polling out the door right now. This is a turnout game. And it's a turnout game of margins. You know, what are the margins each candidate gets from their respective areas?
Well, in fact, about 8 out of 10 voters right now wish that they had other candidates to vote for. If you see that kind of sort of general disgust among the population of voters, how do you sort of make a prediction? I mean, I trust the polls that I'm seeing. I just don't know that the people that are being polled are necessarily going to be there on Tuesday. How do you figure out where the enthusiasm is to get out and vote?
You know, we've consistently been seeing that Clinton supporters and Trump supporters are equally enthused about voting. There isn't a big enthusiasm gap. Where we have the enthusiasm gap is with independent voters. They have clearly not liked their choices here.
Yeah.
And, if this becomes a base election in Michigan, it really does come down to which side gets their voters out, with Democrats having a slight advantage.
Well, the general tightening that we've seen, the fact that this race has seemed to get closer over the last week or two, would you say that that's just sort of the general, that's the natural state of things, the way it usually happens, or does this have more to do with the FBI announcement about Hillary Clinton's emails, which really wasn't anything other than an announcement?
Well, one thing we've been seeing, and we've been seeing it since June of 2015, is Hillary Clinton's numbers are rock solid, consistent, 42 to 44%. It's Donald Trump's numbers that are shifting. And when that FBI letter came out, what it did was it reminded voters why they didn't like Hillary Clinton. And those Republicans are starting to come back home, and that's what's made this race close. But Michigan races are decided amongst independent voters in South Michigan. And that is still Trump's Achilles heel. Moderate women in Oakland and West Wayne.
All right, and we're going to leave it there. Richard, thanks very much for your time this morning. I appreciate it. And Richard will be back with us on Tuesday for our election coverage. Let's bring in this morning's roundtable. Stephen Henderson is here from the Detroit Free Press, former Senate Minority Leader in Lansing, Gretchen Whitmer, back with us again, former Senate Majority Leader in Lansing, Randy Richardville, and from the Detroit News, Nolan Finley. I don't notice. I'll start with the same question I posed to Richard. Anybody here feel particularly confident in predicting what's going to happen on Tuesday? Do you? Go ahead, Stephen.
Hillary Clinton will win Michigan, mostly because no Republican has carried this state since 1988. It will be closer than it probably was in 12 or 8, but I don't think there are enough base Republican voters. This is not a swing state the way it's being portrayed right now historically, and I think you bet with the odds. She will win here on Tuesday.
This mad dash of candidates and their family members and lieutenants doesn't particularly strike you as anything, is it?
No, well, I mean, I think that, and Richard Schuba just talked about this, it is a sign of Trump feeling as though he's got to break through somewhere in the north in order to win the election. Okay. If he loses all of these states and the state of Florida, that's the ball game, and he's got to find some way to make that flip.
I agree, too. I think that on Election Day and this weekend, we see it more importantly than any other time so far in the election. It comes down to ground game. And the 13th Congressional, the 14th Congressional, the Oakland County Democratic Party, they have run campaigns. It's like a beehive of activity. I went over to the 14th last week. There are so many people there, education, effort, and I think that's what it comes down to. You can have all the yard signs in the world and all the hats in the world, but at the end of the day, it comes down to your ground game, and I feel pretty confident about what we're doing.
Randy, you've been a supporter of Donald Trump's. What do you think we're seeing here? Does he believe that he's got an opening in Michigan, or is it, as Richard and Stephen have said, he's got to pick some place to go try and make a stand in the north?
Well, he was here, twice last week, and his son was here, and he's got a whole lot of, Mike Pence was here the other day, too. Obviously, they think that Michigan is in play. And if Stephen and Gretchen are correct, I think it would be because the Trump campaign didn't have enough time. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago when Mrs. Clinton was up, 12 points in Michigan, and now some polls have it dead even. And I think it's because there are a lot of people that are saying, okay, now it's crunch time, I got to make a decision. Which of the two do I want? Well, obviously, they seem to be picking Trump. And if that continues, then I think Tuesday will be a surprise to some people, but not those of us that have been watching this happen for a while.
No, what are we watching happen here?
Well, clearly the campaigns, both the Republicans and Democrats, are seeing opportunity in Michigan. They're seeing something that's bringing them here in such great numbers, and it's not just the terrific weather we've been having. They're seeing Michigan as a as a wide open opportunity. It's not just Trump that's here. Bill Clinton's here today. Hillary Clinton's coming back. I've been covering politics in this state for a long time. I don't remember presidential candidates here on the day before the election ever. Michigan's in play. It's in play largely, I think, because as Richard Schuba said, Republicans who were never Trump are starting to realize the choice is Trump or Hillary Clinton, and they just can't go there, particularly in light of what they've learned over the last few weeks about her. I think anything could happen on Tuesday. I've said all along that if a race is within 3 points because of the reluctance of some Trump supporters to say, I'm voting for Trump, that any race that's within 3 points is very, very competitive.
As I said to Richard, I tend to trust the polls. I believe that that does tell us where the people who are being talked to and being polled at where they are. I just don't know that I trust the commitment this year of understanding who's going to be there, and that's why I'm not sure I've got a great sense of what's going to happen.
Look at 2010 when the polls missed that wave, and you don't know if you're seeing that again or something entirely different. I think we just don't know where we stand.
Well, I think that you can't measure, the wave in 2010, just like you can't measure the Hispanic wave of voting that we're going to see in this cycle. And there are a lot of indicators that it's going to be a great turnout with Hispanic voters, and that the absentee voters that are coming in, they're 60-40 women, and that plays to Hillary Clinton's favor, I think you got to assume. So
he's got deep electoral trouble, and that's why he's here in Michigan. That's why he's in Pennsylvania. That's why they're deploying people in Wisconsin, because if you add up the votes in those states, if he loses a state like Florida, which he may, if he loses Nevada, if he loses Arizona, which is still very pink as opposed to bright red, he's got trouble. I mean, his path.
If he loses Florida, I'm not sure I see how it works. That's already with him threading the needle everywhere else.
I mean, there are some anomalies here that make where they're campaigning late in the cycle different than other races. But fundamentally, it's that you have one candidate, the Republican candidate, who is desperate for an electoral path that he does not really see, and we haven't seen in any poll yet.
I think there's a key component that might be overlooked here, and I think it's most important for the state of Michigan and for Southeast Michigan in particular. 12 points, 13 points, something like that. Mrs. Clinton is up just a month ago. And now you drive through Michigan, you look around, you see about 40 Trump signs to every 1 or 2 Clinton sign. Why is that? I think people are saying, you know what, she kind of takes us for granted. She seems to be winning Michigan, so maybe we don't need to go there anymore. And at that point, these undecided, and this is the greatest number of undecideds that I ever remember, especially among independents, are looking and say, wow, she doesn't seem to care as much as Trump does. He's been here several times. I was sitting at the Walled Lake Eagles the other night, just a blue-collar kind of group, and they're coming up, can I still get Trump signs? Can I still get Trump signs? And they're looking around saying, gosh, I sure hope he can win. And I think it's like that in little communities all over the state of Michigan.
Yeah, but I would agree with Gretchen on the get out the vote. I don't think the national campaign, I know the national campaign has done very little to help with get out the vote. I was talking to a congressman the other day who was a Republican Congress who was quite worried about his race and was complaining, we're not getting any help at all from the Trump campaign on get out the vote because they don't have a strong get out the vote. And if the Democrats can excite their base, get out the African American voters, get out the dead voters, I think they've got an advantage on Tuesday.
Did you say get out the dead voters?
Nolan, as usual, spreading myths all over television.
When we come back, that's what I want to get to next, is what does all of this mean for the rest of the ballot? Stick around. This is the pre-election day edition of Flashpoint on Local 4. Rambunctious right through the commercial break here. We're talking about Election Day, of course, and if we have an election where none of the above might be likely to win, if that were one of the choices, what does that mean for the rest of a very thick, very dense ballot? Stephen, we've got some congressional races that I'm not sure anybody thought Mike Bishop's seat was going to be in play. I think he would tell you that he's concerned about how competitive it's become, but let's start to focus away the rest of the ticket. What does all this mean?
Well, I mean, I think that, again, it's about who turns out on Election Day and whether you can get your voters to the polls. I am also skeptical of the Mike Bishop is in trouble narrative that has come out the last 3 weeks. I mean, I think if you look at that district, if you look at who he is, somebody who represented a big part of that district in the state Senate, his father represented that district. I don't see Susanna Shkreli, who I think is a wonderful candidate and who I would prefer in that seat, I don't see her winning in that district. I mean, I think we've gotten a little far afield from reality here in Michigan in the last couple of weeks because it's exciting, right? Oh, it's close. The candidates are coming. Things are going to be different than what we expect. I don't know that we're going to be as surprised on Election Day by what ends up happening as we have sort of predicted that we would be in these last few weeks.
Well, I'm going to do something I rarely do, and I kind of disagree with Stephen on this one. I live in the 8th Congressional District. I will tell you that Mike Rogers, when he represented it, he always had a Lansing office, a Lansing presence. Bishop closed it down. He's written off Ingham County, and he's got a big chunk of Oakland County. Donald Trump has really been a drag on the ticket in Oakland County, and I think that independents in Oakland County and women voters especially play a big role in that congressional district. And Susanna Shkreli absolutely is an attractive candidate for a lot of really substantive and important reasons. So I think that seat actually is in play, but at the end of the day, it's all about turnout for everyone.
It's interesting, Randy. Susanna Shkreli's had a surprising amount of money to spend. We've seen an awful lot of ads in that race. What are your thoughts on whether that's in play?
Well, Mike Bishop is, you know, he's a good friend of mine. I've known him 20 years or something like that. Succeeded him in his leadership post in the state senate. Don't ever underestimate Mike Bishop. He's a strong guy as far as knowing the issues and being able to communicate with people. I think that the entire makeup of the congressional people representing Michigan will stay the same. I don't think that any Democrats or Republicans will change. And I don't think that the Democrats have as much unity behind Hillary Clinton. I think the whole thing with Bernie and all sorts of things have messed that up a little bit. We've had our own problems with so many people on the Republican side that Trump helps, but he doesn't help as much as maybe some other candidates in the past. So I think it's all going to be turnout. It's all going to be, you're going to get out and vote, and what is going to inspire you to get out and vote. At this point in time, I don't know where any television ads are going to make any changes to anybody's mind, but it's going to be who gets out.
You see any changes coming in the congressional? We're obviously going to have a new person in the 1st district, but does it flip?
You know, 2 weeks ago when polls were 10, 11, 12%, it was looking like just a rout of Trump in Michigan. I thought a lot of those congressional seats were vulnerable, and I thought in Oakland County a lot of Republicans at every level were vulnerable. Now that it's tightened up, if this race stays, even if it goes to 4 or 5%, I think the incumbents particularly are safe. I don't think there's any down ballot effect from the presidential race, so I think they're going to be okay.
Let's talk then about some of the other issues that are that we're facing. Stephen, this RTA issue is enormous. What's your sense of what's happening there?
I think that passes as well. I think it may fail in Macomb County or be close to failing in Macomb County, but that won't overtake the results elsewhere.
There's no opt-out for counties this time.
There is no opt-out. That's right. And so it's really the majority of Washtenaw, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb that will make this decision. And I think the margins in Washtenaw will be huge, right? 70, 75% maybe. And I think it'll win pretty handily in Wayne and Oakland. So what happens in Macomb won't sink it. And I think that's important that again, think about that. We are making this decision together. We are not saying, you know, you make your decision and I'll make mine, and then we'll figure out whether that works together. As a region, we are saying, hopefully, yes to regional transit.
Does that one feel like it's sort of boils down to turnout to you, or is that one maybe turnout proof, Randy?
I don't think that people are going to turn out to vote for or against that. I think it's mostly going to be the presidential vote that brings people out.
That's what I mean, though. Does that end up impacting what happens with it?
It could. I think, though, that people are, you know, I was a Republican that supported that in the legislature. There are Democrats that were against it. I think most of us are looking for the common good in all of that southeast Michigan region, and I think that's what it's going to bring. But most Republicans will probably vote against it, I would say, but I think it's going to pass.
I can't think of the last time voters turned down a regional issue. They supported the SMART millage last time out. They supported the DIA millage. They supported the zoo millage. So, you know, they have a pretty good track record on regional issues. I think if it fails, it's simply because people didn't understand what it was all about, and the folks pushing the measure haven't done a really terrific job in explaining how it's going to benefit you.
You told me before we did the program, Gretchen, you saw somebody with a Detroit ballot, and it's enormous. And a part of that is 63 candidates for the Detroit School Board. And I'm wondering about, you know, I always think about voter fatigue as you're trying to wade your way through all of this and what that ends up meaning. But it's kind of comical when you saw it, wasn't it?
Oh, it was stunning. You know, and obviously I don't live in Southeast Michigan, and so I defer to all of your expertise on you know, forecasting what's going to happen. But I will say that a ballot that big really convinces me more than anything that we've got to make voting easier and more accessible for as many people as possible. To think that so many people are going to stand in line, take off work, get child care, try to figure out how to get transportation, to cast a vote on something that's that long is really troubling, because I'm worried that people will be discouraged from casting their ballot. And that's more than anything what we should be making easier.
It's weary to look at it. Stephen, in fact, we've got two really big pieces for Detroiters. The CBA issue, which I'm not sure even the most seasoned among us fully understand the difference between these two proposals and where they're headed. And then this is a school board election that matters.
It does.
And yet it's been very difficult to vet 63 candidates.
Yeah, it has. Although there's been some really good work done among local journalists looking into their backgrounds. There are lots of voter guides where you can go and look at what the candidates say about themselves, including the Free Press and the News, where you can see what they have to say about why they should be on the school board.
We only had about a third of the candidates bother to fill out most of the questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not sure that all 63 of those candidates are really serious candidates so much as they are people who said, hey, I'm going to sign up for this, but maybe didn't have the money or the organization to get to, you know, to the place where they're really campaigning. Yeah. There are some great choices on that ballot. That's the thing that I think I take the most pleasure in, is that a lot of people raise their hands, and a lot of really high quality people across a really broad range of ideas. You have union folks, you have business folks, you have community folks, and in all of those categories you have great choices to make. I think it's going to be difficult to whittle it down to 7 for a lot of voters, because there are 15 to 20 who I think all are outstanding.
And there's also a lot of familiar names who aren't outstanding and stand as good a chance to get in. And I think the great negligence of this campaign is that the mayor and the business community didn't engage more in making sure we get at least 4 good school board members on that seven-person board. This is the most impactful election facing Detroiters on this ballot.
Going to take one more quick break. We'll wrap things up with Flashpoint. We'll let everybody tell us who's going to be president on Tuesday. Back with more in just a minute. All right, quickly, around the horn. I have a feeling how this will go, but who will be president Wednesday morning, Stephen?
Hillary Clinton, wider in the Electoral College than in the popular vote.
Gretchen.
Hillary Clinton, because it's not about who you want to have a beer with, it's who you trust your kid's future to.
Well, I believe it's going to be Donald Trump, because there are a lot of people answering polls today that are saying, oh yeah, I'm going to vote for Hillary, but aren't going to when they get into that booth. I think the polls are wrong, and I think Trump's going to be our president.
And Nolan Finley, quickly.
I'm out of the prediction business. I've been wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I've been wrong.
This doesn't go well for him.
Now go with Gary Johnson. That's going to do it for us. Meet the Press next. We'll see you Tuesday.